Welcome to another edition of the Nebraska Soybean Board Weekly Market Roundup, being brought to you by Nebraska soybean farmers and their checkoff. Guess what? We are talking WASDE this week. Of course, we saw a Friday report come up, so stick around. We are going to break it all down coming up after this.
Meet the champions of innovation in the heart of Nebraska. They're not just farmers, and they nurture more than just crops, pushing boundaries and turning challenges into opportunities. They trade knowledge and know-how, and their dedication doesn't end at harvest. It's in your every bite and every drive. The future of food, fuel, and fiber, and the future of Nebraska starts right here.
And welcome back once again. As you can see, Heather Ramsey is joining us with the ARC group, and Darin Fessler is joining us with Lakefront Futures. And I'm excited because I get both of you on a report day weekend to talk about and get your takeaways on what these numbers had to say. So Heather, I am going to start with you since you're on my right. Tell me, what was your biggest takeaway, surprise of those numbers from Friday?
I really think that the yield changes were a little bit more than anyone was really expecting. I know there was some average guesses kind of floating around that would be, maybe unchanged to slightly higher on corn yield, maybe slightly lower on bean yield. I do think that bean yield drop from over 53 down to 51 is a pretty big deal. I think it ends up being like 1.4 bushels an acre total is what the drop was. That kind of lowers production, and in general, then we see that trickle down into the stock side of things. And I think the market too was probably the most taken off guard by what was kind of going on in the soybean complex. We saw the most robust reaction to the report was definitely on the soybean side of the equation. So I'd have to say that was probably the most surprising to the market, in my opinion.
Darin, for you?
Yeah, I think it was the beans. I'm not shocked by the bean number. We've been telling our clients, just given how August and September weather had gone, there's a real possibility that we're looking at that 51 to 52 and a half. That's the numbers we were kind of using. So I think some of that's already been a little bit cooked into the balance sheet, if you will. But yes, that was from trade estimates, definitely the big surprise here. It's just the post-report price action, corn and beans, especially the bean side, it wasn't necessarily the greatest feel, but we'll take the win here. The beans, we've been saying, hey, beans can run here above the 20-day EMA, and that's exactly what they're doing. Seasonalities are also in the bullish camp as well.
All right, so let's dive into those numbers a little bit more in depth. Heather, as you look at the trade, you talked about the soybean side of it. What are you seeing for this complex as we move forward?
Well, I think in general, this week has been kind of a mixed bag, so to speak, when you look at soybeans. We have an announcement on China buying some soybeans this week, which I think everyone has sort of written off. They're never going to buy another bushel of soybeans again. In some cases, I don't know that creates a trend. I did have a couple of farmers get excited about that sale, and I just said, whoa, whoa, whoa. This sale happened to China after the election, after you have a lot of speculation going on about what does a tariff look like after the first of the year. My gut takeaway to that is that this is China throwing a Hail Mary out there, buying some beans just in case South America can't perform immediately after the first of the year in that January slot. That was my gut takeaway. I do not think that makes a trend by any means. And as far as in the soybean complex, we do have some pressure or some premium coming back to world palm oil, canola oil, soy oil. Everything is a little bit higher right now because we're seeing some increased mandate blends as far as how much, like an Indonesia example, how much palm oil needs to be in that biodiesel blend. That got bumped up to 40%. When that happens and we see kind of the whole oil complex and go up with it, soy oil was a recipient of that premium as well. So that's helping us support soybeans a little bit. There's kind of these little bits and pieces going on, but no one major story that is driving soybeans on a standalone. I think it takes all of them sort of working together. So this week, thankfully, we've had a lot of those pieces working together, and that's helping us. Honestly, though, I have kind of a limit, in my opinion, as to how much recovery we can see on soybeans, not looking at an issue in South America at this point. So without that South American issue, there's a limit. there's always a limit, but this one seems to be a little bit lower, I think, than maybe what the desires would be from the farming side of the equation. The desire for a large recovery. I don't know that that's going to align with reality anytime soon here.
What about for corn, Darin?
Yeah, I think the corn number from North Dakota to Texas, Colorado, Ohio, that's my coverage area. It's a big crop. And there's areas that it's not so big. And there's a pocket of north central Iowa, northwestern Iowa. They're seeing 50 over, 30 over basis in areas. That's the anomaly. It's a big crop, and you're going to see push on basis. But I think that's a time frame of year. You have guys maybe focus on other things right now. You have maybe a little bit more optimism about the farm bill getting passed. Or are we going to kick some dollars back per acre on corn and beans? If you've had your cash flow needs met, or even if you're starting to maybe core some bins out, maybe get some cash flow going, it's not big. And I think that you get this time of frame of the year, if you've met cash flows, I'm just going to sit back and see what happens. And it might be that way until the middle of December. It might be that way and maybe past the inauguration in January. But I don't think there is a pressing issue at the moment of guys wanting to sell crop right now. And some of it comes down to profitability as well. We can't forget about that.
So before we even dive into this whole political side of it, which I've been excited to hear your both takeaways, I did want to ask you, Darin, because you and I had a conversation a while back about waiting for these numbers from an Iowa, southern Minnesota perspective. Did you see any changes in the numbers considering the weather that it went through this growing season?
Yeah, Minnesota actually, for me and our clients up there, it was actually a little bit better than what we had originally thought. Still down, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was still not the year that many producers in Minnesota would have hoped for, and that goes out to that north central Iowa. It kind of went down that far, but you go to the southwestern part, Scott County, Iowa, Muscatine County, Iowa, we're hearing reports, field averages of over 300 bushel. Again, right along the Mississippi. Keep in mind that's river bottom ground, some of the better ground in Iowa, but it is performing. Even go to over by Des Moines and Marshalltown, Iowa, kind of more or less central Iowa, very, very good yields, 250, 260. So I think Iowa definitely got a record. I think it could have crushed the record if we had some more north central Iowa participating. But in general, again, it goes back. I think this crop is a fairly good one, maybe a 181, 182. I do think the yields kind of come down here probably in that January report.
So we can say we are past election. It just seemed like that's all this market wanted to talk and focus about headed into Tuesday. And Heather, before we even started the program, you had a great comment and things that you're having that conversation with your clientele and customers. And it's beyond looking at where that election turned out.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the election, I'm more interested in the fact that it's over. I look at that as external noise, that the result will be what it's going to be. I can't control then what policies and procedures and things that the administration looks at. But what I can control is what we're doing with the farm and how we're managing risk with the farm. So as much as there's definitely some biases that this administration should have coming into January, that's still a long ways away. What we're trying to do is mitigate the risk on farm. As Darin mentioned, like right now, we're looking at what needs to be moved. What do we need to do to meet cash flow needs? Those kinds of things. I can't necessarily get bogged down in what that political noise looks like. Now, granted, I do think there are some things on the horizon we have to keep an eye on. The word tariff has come up numerous times over the last, several months of this campaign. And so that's something that going forward, as anybody in the commodity business should be, listening to, trying to get their feet underneath of them of what kind of tariffs are we talking about? Is this a change to the status quo or not? Kind of what does that forward projection look like? I don't think that's the next 30, 45 days by any means. That is more of a 6 months plus down the road. How does that affect us? We still have to know, but it can't hinder our decision making and what we're trying to accomplish for the farm, in the near term, in the near, 0 to 3 month window.
So Darin, what kind of conversations were you having?
Well, I just want to make a real quick point with Heather said about the noise. I think that the noise issue of the market and what's circling around trade policies and commodity markets as a whole, that can get guys emotionally, just lackluster. I don't want to do anything. And when you get rallies, we still got to focus on what these stocks use ratios are in beans and world carryouts. They are massive. You can't ignore these things. When you get these pops and beans and you still have beans in the bin, you got to reward it. Yes, beans can make a move to 11, regardless of what bearish fundamentals we have. But are you willing to pull the trigger over the noise? That's the big thing.
All right. I wanted to ask real quick too, because I had seen a picture, Darin, that you had shared on X, formerly known as Twitter, of some soybeans out of South America. And I was wondering if you could kind of expand a little bit on that post.
South America is looking really good at the moment, from Brazil all the way down to Argentina. I spoke to about 10, 15 contacts down there yesterday. There's very little concern at this very moment that crop's not going to get in the ground, and even less concern at the moment about the prospects of safrinha corn delays. So again, we got to look at what Brazil may or may not have this year, and then if they don't have any issues getting this beans out or getting this beans planted, what does that mean for the safrinha corn crop, given that U.S. is coming off a pretty good corn crop themselves?
All right, Heather, what are you thinking come next week? We've only got a few weeks left, really, in earnest of 2024.
Yeah, I think per usual, we will probably have digested our reaction to WASDE by mid-trade in the morning on Monday, it seems like. We don't really hang on to news and trade it for a very long time. We'll kind of go back to, I think, looking at our export picture on corn. I'd really like to see the export numbers kind of totaled up through this week, what that looks like in the grand scheme of things. We're definitely moving and shaking on the corn export side of things. And I think that will kind of dictate a little bit more as far as a risk management standpoint. Any opportunity that we get to go out to D25 and take some action at these levels or better is something we're really looking at doing, getting a little bit more aggressive out there. I have this conversation where guys, current market is pretty close to 450, just under 450 futes on the D25. And guys say, oh, I don't want to do too much. If 450 is my worst sale, I'm going to be so happy, Susan. Oh my gosh. The concern is not that I sell too much 450 today. It's that I haven't sold enough. So when we're having those conversations, I've been flipping it back around on guys. And I love that Darin's laughing, because I'm sure he's having these same conversations that, like, last year we sold some $5 and guys didn't want to go too crazy. And now they're like, why didn't I sell more? I don't know why you didn't sell more, So we're having those conversations about what true risk management looks like, where the risk really is. And at this point in time, it's managing basis risk right now for this crop that's in the bin, and it's managing price risk on the futures there for 25. So that's really what we're going to stay focused on. No matter what's going on in the background, there will always be something to trade. So just trying to take advantage of that when we can.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us this week. We unfortunately have run out of time. A quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. And that's another edition of the Weekend Report, being brought to you by Nebraska soybean farmers and their checkoff.